There we go. Try that again. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 24th meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines, our first official fall meeting, and week number 9. Some people can't count. This is our 9th meeting in person at the Wakanda Club. I'm President Doug Saltzgaver. We're glad to have you here at the Wakanda Club today, those of you here in person and those of you out in cyberspace, watching on our streaming YouTube or watching it later at some point. And thanks again for Invictus Media for filming our meeting today. They had a little hiccup in some things, but they were prepared. They had a backup on the problem piece of equipment, and we are up and running. So thank you guys for being prepared and working through that little technical issue. You guys are professionals. I'm not wearing my mask while I'm at the podium, so you can hear me more clearly, and I'm safely distanced from all of you. We, of course, will be sanitizing the microphone between speakers. We do ask you keep your masks on when not eating or drinking or speaking from the podium, please. Now I will ask Kavi Chala should have had some water before I got up here, to share a moment of inspiration, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the four-way test. Kavi.
Thanks, President Doug. As I started to think about some words of inspiration, every time I'd get home, I'd go, okay, I'm going to sit at my desk, maybe look up some quotes, what to share. I'd first go through the mail, and I'd get some mail from Secretary of State Paul Pate, and a four-letter word would come to my mind. This has happened over and over again. And that four-letter word is vote. As many of you know, I grew up in Zambia and Zimbabwe, where we lived in a world where we had an autocratic dictator. We never got the right to vote. That wasn't a privilege we were born with. It wasn't a privilege we got. So to me, the most inspiring thing is the fact that everybody here has an opportunity to vote, to use their voice to make a difference in this wonderful country. And so with that, please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now to the four-way test. Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
You'd think I'd remember to do this. It's not like they have a sign up here that tells me to do this. All right, we're all cleansed. Now, everyone, please wave at your fellow Rotarians since we can't shake hands. Hello, everybody. Today we want to thank Christina Smith for her there's a decimal point in there, $50 contribution to the Rotary Club Foundation for sponsoring our first table flyer of this Rotary year. For those of you here at Wakanda, there's a copy on your table. For those tuning in cyberspace, it was displayed during our pregame show. Christina is with Community Support Advocates. Their Momentum event is the 16th anniversary Works for Growth and Recovery for Artists and with Disabilities. You can support this cause virtually the month of October or in person on October 2nd at the Mainframe Studios location. Please see the flyer for more details, or you can contact Christina Smith directly. Thank you, Christina. Now that it's fall, chilly weather is soon on its way. Our annual Operation Warm Coat Drive is starting up to help keep kids warm. There is a sign-up sheet on your table for you to donate to buy a coat for $20. We will bill your account. You can also email Kitty at the Rotary office to sign up. So please do and pledge to buy a coat or two or maybe 20. We've had this project now for the past 6 years. Each year, the club has raised more money than the year before. Last year, we were able to order 300 coats for kids in Des Moines. The coats will be distributed to child clients at Orchard Place and Child Serve. Orchard Place also simultaneously has a winter drive for hats, mittens, and boots, so their clients will be fully protected during the winter. I would assume that Child Serve does something like that, but since the Chief Financial Officer of Child Serve wasn't in my bed when I woke up this morning, I'm not sure. For those of you who don't get that, my wife is the Chief Financial Officer of Orchard Place. The deadline for raising the funds is October 15th. We've got a little bit of time, but don't procrastinate. So going with my theme for the year, please leave something behind today by making a pledge to support this project. And since I gave a little plug there for Orchard Place, I better do something, so I'm going to step up, and if Kitty would put me down for a $100 donation, I will be the first to buy 5 coats for those kids in need. And hopefully a few more of you will step up as well. And now, that great radio voice, David Oman, is going to introduce our keynote speaker today. But remember, for questions for our speaker, please come up to the microphone up here by the American flag. This way our live stream audience can see you, and please do identify yourself before asking your question, and the microphone will be sanitized between questions. So with that, the great voice. Doesn't he have a great face for radio, everyone?
Paul, you're next. Well, good afternoon. Since there's no sign at the table, Doug, stay seated, eat your cookie, try some new humor next week, and thanks for the $1,000. That was really good of you. This is my first chance to be at the podium since Doug has taken the gavel as president of our club, and some of you know that we live next door to each other, and we've worked on some projects in the neighborhood from time to time, and he's a good guy and a good Rotarian. And I know with Skeet, who's sitting with us, who had the gavel several years ago, I'm really proud of you, and I'm looking forward to the job. You're already off to a great start as our president. Congratulations, Doug. Right now, it's my treat to introduce another really good friend. I think Paul and I have known each other for well over 30 years. But first things first, and this I know, Paul and Jane Pate are terrific parents of now 3 grown children and grandparents of 5 kids. And I've seen those kids grow up. You watched ours a little bit, and it's just a great family, Paul. Paul is 3rd generation with Pate Asphalt in Marion. He was elected to the Iowa Senate from Lynn County in 1988 and again in 1992. He moved to the office of Secretary of State in 1994, and we got to be really close in 1997 and 1998. In 2001, Paul was elected the mayor of Iowa's 2nd largest city, Cedar Rapids, and he had the really good judgment to leave that office before the flood in 2008. Paul returned to public life and to state office in 2014. He was elected as Iowa's, I think, 37th Secretary of State. He was reelected in 2018. He has revamped, modernized, and broadened the reach of that office, and he'll discuss more of that in detail. The Secretary has been recognized for his work beyond Iowa. and he just finished a term as the president of the National Association of Secretaries of State. The 50 men and women in our country who are responsible for impartial, secure, transparent, and rapid tabulating and reporting election results. No more critical than this year. I heard Jim Windsor visit with Paul just before our lunch, and you kind of stole my thunder there, Jim, but I'm going to speak for myself, but I think I speak, and I echo Jim, and I speak for everybody in this room, Paul, in thanking you for grabbing the bull by the horns, so to speak, and directing the first ever statewide mailing of ballot requests in the primary election during the crunch and the start of the COVID-19 effort. Thank you for that. So with that, we're glad you're with us today. It's my pleasure to introduce our Secretary of State, Paul Pate.
All right.
Wife know you're really good at this domestic stuff? Okay, I just thought she might want, y'all tip her off later saying he can do the dusting now at home. He's pretty good at it. Thank you, David, for the introduction. Yes, public service is important. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to visit with the Rotary today. It's less than 40 days till Election Day. And I can reflect a little bit and really appreciate the fact that Rotary has a great motto, service above self. I've dedicated much of my life to a public service. It was something that I learned from my parents, and it's something we try to instill in our own children. And we want to remind people that getting involved in their community is very important, and serving others has been my goal and my time in the Iowa Senate as a mayor of Cedar Rapids and my 3 terms as Secretary of State. But service, participation, and integrity are the 3 pillars of my office, and we try to provide that every day. My goal is for Iowa to be the #1 state in the nation when it comes to voter registration and participation. We're already in the top 10, and we can always do better. I think voting is the most important thing we can do as citizens. It's not only our civic duty, but voting gives us all a voice. The United States of America is the greatest and freest country in the world because we give the power to the people to determine our leaders. And as Abraham Lincoln famously said, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That power belongs to all of you. By voting, you have a say in not just who is your next president or senator, it's also a way for you to get a say on how your tax dollars are spent and who makes the decisions in your local community. Each month before COVID, my staff and I attended the naturalization ceremonies at the federal courthouse in Des Moines. And our message to those new citizens is always register to vote and be a voter. Voting gives you power. So make your voice heard. To be a voter in Iowa, you first have to register to vote. And it's never been easier to do than simply getting out there and registering. And in 2016, we launched an online voter registration here in the state of Iowa. Since then, more than 220,000 Iowans have utilized the system. And I'm going to assume most of you, and I hope I'm correct in this, have already registered to vote. But if you've moved since the last election, it's important to keep your information up to date. You can go to voterready.iowa.gov and do that right now. It only takes a few minutes off your cell phone or back and get on your laptop. We encourage people to register ahead of time before the general election. The pre-registration deadline is Saturday, October 24th, so that you can have an opportunity to vote. Now, you can also register at the polls because we have same-day voter registration here in Iowa. But you will need both a valid ID and a proof of residency like a utility bill. And you can do those electronically. Made it that simple. To me, it's important you have a voting plan. And registering is the first step. Another initiative we launched when I returned to office in 2015 is the Safe at Home program. And I hope you'll invite me back in the future to talk about that program specifically. I think it's very important. Safe at Home is an address confidentiality program for survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, trafficking, and stalking. The easiest way for me to describe it is we give participants a fake address that they use on all official documents. If the bad person not to get it, actually happens to get a hold of that address, they'll end up in the middle of the Des Moines River. And I think that's probably an appropriate place they would go. This shields their actual physical address from public records and makes it much harder for their abuser to find them. It allows them to come in out of the shadows and be part of society and a community again. It's an important layer of protection. It helps participants regain a sense of normalcy in their lives. We also make sure participants are able to register to vote and cast their ballot without their address becoming public. We currently have more than 600 participants in the program across 62 counties. So this isn't just an urban issue when you talk about domestic violence and stalking and those kind of issues. This is across our state. As much as I think this is a great state and a very safe state, we still have, unfortunately, challenges we have to work on. Our nation just celebrated its 100th anniversary of women gaining access to the ballot box with the passage of the 19th Amendment. And one of the leaders of that movement was an Iowan, Carrie Chapman Catt. Carrie Chapman Catt led the way and devised the strategy that secured its passage. And for Carrie Chapman Catt, it was a culmination of a 33-year struggle. Her fight for the vote is an inspirational story that shows if you have a dream and you work hard and you believe in yourself, you can accomplish anything. And that's a message I share often with my children and my grandchildren. To honor her, my office created the Carrie Chapman Catt Award. Any Iowa high school that registers at least 90% of the eligible students to vote receives the Carrie Chapman Catt Award. Last year, 18 schools registered at least 90% of their eligible students to vote, an amazing accomplishment for them. A big factor in that was a new state law that allows 17-year-olds to register to vote. The requirement is usually 18, but if you're 17, you can register. You have to be 18 or older to vote in the general election in November, but 17-year-olds can vote in a June primary election, and clearly they've been able to go to the caucuses for the Democrat and Republican Party for some time. There are 3 ways to vote in Iowa. Iowans like choices. Absentee through the mail, in person ahead of time, election day at your county auditor, and of course at the polls on election day. Choice is up to you. All 3 methods are safe and secure, and I want all eligible Iowans to register to vote and to participate in our elections. Around Labor Day, my office sent absentee ballot request forms to all active registered voters in the state. We did this ahead of the June primary, and the result was a clean, smooth election and a record high turnout, despite a pandemic and social unrest across the state. If you want to vote from home, just fill out one of these forms that you were mailed. And you should have gotten one like this from our office. Some of you got probably about 6 or 7 others from other organizations. Some did it right, and unfortunately a few didn't get it right. But you can feel confident if you want to use the form we sent, or you can go online and look at what your county auditor has or our office has and use that form as well. Postage is already paid on the one we mailed out. I know a lot of you are, again, getting these multiple absentee ballots requests. You only need to fill out one. You can fill them all out, but we're only going to mail you one ballot, folks. That's the way we do it in Iowa. One vote, one person, if you're eligible to vote. If you're, an important thing here is remember, you need to include your ID, your voter ID information. This is a way to make sure only eligible voters are voting, and it's you that's voting. And that information is on your Iowa driver's license. That's your driver's license number. If you don't have one of those, you can get a voter ID number from the county auditor, and those would have been sent out to you some time ago, but if you misplaced it for some reason, you can reach out and they'll send you a new one. So you can make sure you're successful in that regard. You don't need to do both in the sense of using a voter ID PIN number from the auditor or the driver's license. Just one or the other is what we're looking for here. If you're not sure, as I said, reach out to your county auditor. Complete the form and mail it in. On October 5th, the county auditors will begin sending out the absentee ballots to those who requested them. 2 important dates to remember. Saturday, October 24th is the deadline to request your absentee ballot. Monday, November 2nd is the deadline to have your ballot postmarked and mailed to your auditor. And I suggest and encourage you to do it ahead of time. There's been a lot of talk this year about concerns with the Postal Service. And my office is in constant communication with the post office, both in Iowa and on the federal level. And we just had a conversation with the Postmaster General this last week, as Secretary of State did, to discuss where we're at. And I just want to tell you, they have reassured us they are more than capable of handling an increase in the absentee mailings. The volume is actually small compared to what they handle on a daily basis. Unfortunately, it's gotten a little political, we didn't notice. And I just want to assure you, from the logistical standpoint, they got it. If you don't want to use the mail, you can always vote in person at your county auditor's office or at the polls on Election Day, Tuesday, November 3rd. Polls will be open from 7 in the morning to 9 p.m. We're supplying all polling places with hand sanitizer, literally thousands of gallons of that we're distributing across the state. The DOT's helping us out with that right now. It was donated via our good friends over at commercial plug here, I'm giving you that now, Anheuser-Busch. I told them this is not to drink, this is to use just on your hands. But that's being provided by them. But we're providing hand sanitizer, masks, social distancing markers, and more to protect voters and the poll workers themselves. The key is we want you to be safe and secure and to make your voice heard. And I hope you all will be a voter and being a part of that. I'd like to open it up to questions, if that's all right, give you more time on that front. All right? Thank you.
Okay, now there are those who ask me to turn it off again, perhaps, but I'll take that chance. Paul, this is a very perhaps simplistic and unnecessary question, but to me, seems to me there's a lot of flack out there about there are only two ways to vote: either show up in the midst of a blizzard or a rainstorm or whatever and maybe get to vote, or you get one of these mail-in ballots, and to me, what you described here is three very adequate options. But am I the only one who doesn't hear or does hear this flack that's going on? If we can't mail out ballots and people just send them in as the official vote, their official vote, we're being disenfranchised. What can you say to that?
Well, sadly, politics gets involved in elections. Surprise, surprise. My role as a commissioner of elections is to try and keep this a professional level. We don't run elections consistently in all 99 counties and across all 50 states. But there are those who have opinions on what strategy works best for their campaigns. Some like a ground campaign where they push people out on election day. Some like to have them vote early and get that ballot in the bank, if you will. And that's a battle they can have. But from my perspective, I'm telling Iowans, I've heard you loud and clear. You want choices. And depending on what part of the state you're in and depending on what your circumstances are, you are more comfortable with which of the options I outlined you want to do. I can tell you that our rural counties like to vote in person. They have a much higher turnout in that respect. The urban counties, they do the mail stuff a little higher percentage-wise. Dallas County actually is one of the highest counties in the state for the absentee ballot approach. And then the confusing component is that we get national news, folks, and we're hearing a lot of the political debate on the national stuff, not Iowa. And there's a difference between mail elections and absentee. I'm not a big fan of mail elections. Mail elections are in states where they mail everybody who's registered a ballot, whether you ask for it or not. So it just comes in the mail. I'm uncomfortable with that approach personally because I think it's like mailing a blank check. I want you to know it's coming and that you wanted the ballot. And that's a way to secure it. And that's part of what voter ID is about. But when you request one in Iowa via absentee, you're telling me you want it and you're giving me your voter ID information. So I know it's really you, and it's a way to verify. Because my job is also to maintain the integrity side. Might sound a little corny, but my phrase is easy to vote but hard to cheat. We don't put up with cheating in Iowa. We have a very clean election. So we want to make sure whatever we do, we can give you the confidence on election day when we're tallying those votes that they're accurate and that when we tell you who got elected, you're going to agree with it. Because, and I'm going on my soapbox here, but I believe the biggest challenge we face in our elections these days is misinformation, both intentional and non-intentional, because that information is what it's doing is it's creating a attitude that elections aren't accurate, and that come election day, people are going to say, "Don't believe it. That's not my senator. That's not my president. They somehow did something. They fudged something. The post office didn't do this, or somebody else didn't do that." That's the battle we're facing, and that's what our foreign entities are doing. I just got an alert just yesterday from our folks in D.C. Pointing out the obvious to us, but that is that our foreign bad agents are still at it. They're actively in social media, actively trying to create that kind of confusion, if you will, and disenfranchisement. What the folks in China want, and the folks in North Korea want, and the folks in Russia want, and the other countries like that, they're not trying to tell you who to pick for president as much as they just want you to not vote. They want you to have distrust in our government. That's my 2 cents here, folks. And we can't let them do that. We need to vote, and we need to trust the results. So that's my soapbox speech.
Paul Pate, name's Hal Chase, and I was a retired history professor. What I know most about is African American history. So I appreciate your mention of Carrie Chapman Cat. You need to mention somebody else, because is Alexander Clark Sr. out of Muscatine. Okay. Iowa was the first northern state to guarantee black men then, right, the right to vote in January 1868. Okay. The other is a very practical question. Does a vote that you use, and you get this in the mail, you fill it out, you send it in, if that person dies before Tuesday, November 3rd, is that vote counted?
Not in Iowa.
Okay.
We have some jokes about that in other states. No, literally in all states, all 50 states, if they pass away before the election day, those ballots are not counted.
Okay.
And that's part of why mail-in ballots don't go into just blank. They don't go into a box. They're not opened. They're still left there. And if we get noticed they passed on, then we will pull that out.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Secretary.
Pleasure.
My name's Susan Scharnberg, and my question actually kind of follows along with Hal's.
Mm-hmm.
When can you begin counting those mail-in ballots?
Certainly. Well, there's 2 different phases to this. We allow the county auditors in a general election to start unsealing the absentee ballots on Monday before the election. They're not counting them, but they're opening them up and getting them ready to start running through the counting machines. I've requested before the Legislative Council, and they're meeting on Friday, to extend that and let them do it also on Saturday. And so what basically they'll do is they'll have 48 hours, 24 on Saturday and 24 on Monday, to get these prepped and ready. And I've had conversations with the auditors, because we're anticipating a high turnout, about the volume and what we can do and how it will be handled. And they've come back feeling pretty comfortable they can get it done. Most of these counties can do about 1,000 ballots an hour easily. Some of the counties can do more because they have more sophisticated machines. So they'll be ready, and technically, they'll be able to on Tuesday start running them through the tally machine, and we'll have the votes there for everybody. And that's why I'm pretty confident when I get asked by the national media, we'll have the elections before you go to bed. I don't know if you're going to bed at 10 o'clock or 2 in the morning, but we're going to try to get those results for you. But I do try to tell people, and I'm told the media, it's not a race to get the results out at 9:05 p.m. That's what the media does all the time. Most of that's exit interviews they're doing. My goal is to give you the accurate results, because as I said earlier, we don't want to set us up for any doubt in our results. So if we were to put something out and then later have to take it back, walk it back, that's disastrous. So we're not going to be in a race election night. to get it out. But it won't, we're not talking about days and weeks. I'm very comfortable Iowa will have theirs out within a respectable window. Some states may take a little longer because just of the nature of how they do it. But again, not weeks. Mark, I didn't see you come in.
Mark's now.
Oh, is this a loaded question? Come on now.
Actually,
No,
not sure what's going on here.
don't get violent.
Okay. You sparked a thought with me a little bit ago on, and it was really relating to the ballot after, the counting process. In particular, your view on ballot. We hear this term ballot harvesting. And so that's what triggered my thought processes here. When we see vote tallies that continue for days and days, not necessarily here in Iowa, but for days and days, could you speak to how Iowa does that process versus other states, and why we hear this term of ballot harvesting coming out and what that really means? Because I'll tell you, as a voter, I feel like I'm being undermined when the vote continues on for an extended period of time. It's time for something else to happen, and I don't have control of that. Could you speak to that?
Yeah. There's always that concern about deadlines and the processes, and we've tried to clear a lot of those up in Iowa by putting those deadlines very, very clearly out front. One thing that we did was we're the first state to put IMB codes on your return envelopes. When you use our mailer, when the auditor sends you your ballot, it'll be coded. So as soon as it goes into the first mailbox, we'll know. So what that does is that gives us a little more security on knowing that it was mailed before the November 2nd. So we're not subject to postmarks and wondering why it wasn't there. We do allow almost up to a week afterwards for those to come in slowly through the mail if that happens, but we will know if they were mailed beforehand. What we are concerned about is when we find that there are incidences where people are trying to say there's a block of votes that didn't get counted right, or didn't get processed here or there, so they want to do more recounts, or they want to drag it out. And this happens quite a bit, frankly, in states. We've seen it happen, frankly. Florida was a big one when they started going back. What happens sometimes after the election, if they see that they were short 500 votes to win, they will go back into a challenge process and they will try to find 500 more votes to win. And Minnesota was probably the best example. We all remember that one, the U.S. Senate race up there. That was razor thin. And ballots just kept appearing for several weeks after the election. And that creates that distrust issue. We have put a lot of safeguards in our process. Our poll workers are it's Republican and Democrat every step of the way. The chain of custody on all the ballots. These are all important because all it takes is one poll worker when they leave the poll to forget to go in to drop their ballots off or whatever, and now you're off a whole precinct. We have, again, procedures in place so that we have to account for all those things. I wish other states were as good at that. That's the problem. We have a very clean and I'm giving the auditors credit. We really hammer it hard, and they do a yeoman's job. And if they slip up, my job as their coach, per se, is to get them back on track. And we can be proud of that in Iowa. That's why I alluded to we'll have our results election night. We may have some challenges in a few states, but I think we've come a long ways. My colleagues in these other states are doing what they can to improve on those. Most states, when it comes to elections, first let me dial back. Elections are run by states, not the federal government. Got that? Next, most elections are run by county governments under the guidance of a state office like mine. They don't work for me. They work for the citizens of their county. We provide guidelines, and we try to show them how they have to follow the law of the state of Iowa. So that kind of team approach is how we have to work to be successful in our state. And we've done it well here. Other states are still struggling with some of that, but I think, again, they're well on track. So hope that gave some insight.
Hi, Mr. Secretary. I'm John Stark, and I do appreciate you accepting my renewal for notary. That was a grueling exam. Bob Vedral.
Your answer actually kind of dovetails with mine. It seems that voting as a process is kind of old-fashioned. First off, it seems as though, especially now, that consistency across our country would be important. Secondly, it does seem as though we can do everything online. And I mean everything, as you know. We can buy a car, we could have doctor visits that are online. My question to you is, what's the future of voting? This November is going to be a cluster, and we all know it, and I'm sure you're prepared for it. I hope the other 49 guys are. But what's the future after this one? What do you see as modernizing the voting system?
Mm-hmm. Well, we are still focusing on that every step of the way. When I came in being secretary, that my first administration, which was a few moons back, actually that was back in '94, we thought we'd be voting by telephone. Again, go back, folks, 1994. Don't think we're at today. We go back to '94, we still had brick phones, but we were thinking we'd be voting by telephone by now, way before now. Technology has advanced significantly, but with that, we're finding we have a lot of vulnerabilities still with it. Just today, I got a notice of a vendor in the elections arena who got hacked. And fortunately for us, it's not one of ours, and we have certain safeguards for that. But we deal with that every single day. When I first came back into this position again 6 years ago, we didn't have any cyber experts. We had an IT guy who just made sure our computers were all up and going and everything was all sweet and nice. But now we have a full team on the cyber side that constantly, every day, has to battle to keep these bad actors out of our system. Some of them could be somebody messing around in the basement of their house, and others are people from other countries trying to screw with us. That is the challenge we're facing now, and that's what also is impeding the advancement, if you will, of going to more modern ways of voting, because we're not comfortable and confident of the integrity side yet to do that fully. So we do count on paper ballots, and it's going to be here for a while. I guess that's my answer. It won't be changing very quickly.
My name is Dave Dixon. I have a two-part question. We hear about dead people voting in other states. How do we know that that's not happening in Iowa? And secondly, when a student comes to school from out of state and registers to vote in Iowa, how do we know that they're not voting in two states?
Certainly. On the death situation, there gets to be a lot of confusion because some people think that we have them still on the registration roll if they get a request to vote absentee. I've seen those, and I'm sure some of you have seen those, that'll get sent to your home saying that your grandparent or your uncle or somebody like that, we want you to, sign up for your ballot. And you're going, well, they passed away 3 years ago. Why on earth are they sending this to me? Is the auditor or the Secretary of State screwed up and don't know they passed on? Are they still voting? No. What happens is whoever sent that to you is not probably from the auditor's office or our office. It's some entity who's using a bad list, an old list. Or I've gotten some strange mailings. I got one showed to me the other day from my brother-in-law who moved out of Iowa 35 years ago. Well, he's not registered to vote in Iowa, but so they have bad records they're doing. So it's not a ballot, but they're getting the absentee side. So the impression is there, and that's not a good one because then they quite questioning our dead people voting. We constantly update our list based on both a national service we get on deaths, and we work with lists from funeral directors and other entities like that. We work with the county auditor. They're monitoring that as well. And collectively, we're pretty comfortable with that. And then back to voter ID. We're issuing the voter ID number. Well, you kind of have to be alive to have that. So that kind of controls that side of it. The college student one is a bit more of a challenge, to be very honest with you. We do have a significant amount of out-of-state college students who come to Iowa to go to school, and they choose Iowa as their residency to vote in. And they can do that. That's legal. They can do it. They are limited, though. They can only vote in Iowa. They cannot vote in their home state where they were from. And we're a part of a partnership. I think we're up to about 28, maybe 30 states now out of the 50 that we share that information. So after an election day, we cross-check the lists. And if little Joey or Susie gets shown that they voted in Illinois and they voted in Iowa, one of the states is going to go knock on their door and tell them they just committed a felony and they're going to get in trouble. So that's my answer on that one.
Secretary Pate, my name is Skeet Wooten, and I have basically two questions. One, what is your annual budget that you have to run elections?
Mm-hmm.
And two, this came up earlier this year where the city of Waukee and I think Ankeny approved about $250 million worth of bond issues to build schools. And something like 5,500 people voted in those elections. Would it not make more sense to have things like that happen in November on regular election days, so all elections are held on the first Tuesday in November? Thank you.
Our budget is about 1.5 million. It was actually reduced by the legislature this last session, and we're still negotiating on that rationale. So it's not a large budget by any means. We've been very fortunate this past 2 years maybe almost 3, to be getting some federal funding. Both the president and our congressional delegation passed legislation that were able to assist us with a lot of the COVID costs. The cost to do the statewide mailing for the absentee ballots, that came out of that fund. And a lot of the things we're doing to pay for the COVID protection at the polling sites are federal pass-through dollars that we're able to share with those folks. We have not seen an increase of any substantive level in a decade or more in the elections arena. And that's disappointing and frustrating, but we hope that maybe we'll revisit that this coming session. Regarding the timing of elections, I was very pleased when we shifted and put all the schools and city elections on the same Tuesday in November. That was a big change. It was. I'm not going to speak for the legislature and their rationale, but I'll speak for myself. It only made sense. It was a nonpartisan election, so there was no political parties involved. But it was a way to make sure more people were voting. We had such dismal turnouts. We were talking 3% in some cases for school board elections. And it's one of our biggest pieces of our property tax bill. So I think it makes a lot of sense. We've also reduced the number of out elections like you're talking about. We still have them there, and part of the rationale I think there, and I'm not going to speak for the League of Cities or the school boards, school districts, but there are situations where they need to have those votes based on the timing for construction or whatever else is going on in their districts, and that's what their thinking is for that. If it's something you think ought to be changed, I'd encourage you to visit with your legislators and make sure your voice is heard. Okay. I am bound down to 4 minutes, so I can either take a last question or I can leave on a high note. I'll leave on a high note. Thank you again.
Proper number of wipes ready to go. Thank you, Secretary, for being with our Rotary Club today and giving us more information about your job and the duties that go with it. In your honor, we are donating the book, Who Did It? First, 50 scientists, artists, and mathematicians who revolutionized the world. And we're giving that to the Downtown School Library in your honor, and I know you've signed it and given some words of encouragement to the to the students. And I just realized I didn't bring all my notes up. Haven't been doing this long enough now that I've got it memorized. I want to thank everyone for being here today, whether in person here at Wakanda or out in cyberspace watching our live stream, or if you're watching it later on our YouTube channel. Just to let you know, those out there in cyberspace today, there are 35 of us here in the room today. We're all safely socially distant, and we hope that more of you will consider joining us here. 35 is exactly half the number we're allowed to have in here for our group. So we'd like to get that number up to where we've got it doubled today. And again, we only want you here if you're feeling comfortable to be here with us. So hope you'll consider it. And remember, RSVPs by Tuesday. You can do it the email link that comes out on Friday or on the link that's in the email bulletin on Tuesdays in the newsletter. And yes, we do have more meetings coming up. October 1, Teresa Greenfield, candidate for U.S. Senate. And one of the other commercials I've seen for her, apparently her father was a crop duster, so maybe he can do a flyby during our meeting, buzz the Wakanda Club here. On October 8th, Barbara Stinson, the World Food Prize. We'll have a special cameo appearance from Ambassador Ken Quinn, who is an honorary member of our Rotary Club of Des Moines. And then on October 15th, Senator Joni Ernst. And I understand she's going to bring a male pig in for a demonstration. Is that right, David? No? Okay, maybe not. Okay. Thank you for being with us today. I'm part of the Rotary Club of Des Moines, and thanks for you tuning in later to watch our meeting. And as I said before, my theme is leave something behind, no matter how big or small. So let's try to do that today and each day until we meet again next week and hopefully make the world a little better place to live in. With that, we are adjourned.